first segment for today, and as promised before the break, we're sitting down to talk about the consortium of the University of Belize and the social sector senators lecture series on the referendum and the ICJ. And joining us for our conversation today, we have history lecturer from the University of Belize, Cesar, and we also have business senator Mark Lizarraga. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having us.
Let's start off to look at the genesis of this marriage of sorts. What led to this marriage between the two, the senators and the university?
Well, as you know, this is a national issue, and I think most people get excited by it or feel passionate about it in some way or the other. But in August, the university and the social sector senators got together in a meeting, and we found out we had common interests. And that common interest stemmed around being a part of this educational campaign, so to speak. The university, of course, has a mandate to educate, and they were in the process of planning a lecture series, and we basically piggybacked on it, I think, and we all had common interests. Ambassador Schuman had expressed some interest prior to that, much prior to that, about coming and doing a series of lectures for the students. And I think we convinced him that maybe it would be best at this time not only to do it for the students, but to do it countrywide. So as a result, we decided that we would have these events. A committee was formed, which Mr. Ross is a part, and we decided that perhaps the best approach would be for us to have a series of lectures throughout the country, in all the major municipalities, and Belize City, Belmopan. We kick it off, of course, in Belmopan at the UB campus, and we have a schedule. But basically what we wanted to do was we wanted to broaden the exposure of the Belizean public to the varied views, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak, so that everything could be aired in these town hall type presentations. It's not a debate. We're not having a debate. We're having three presenters, and we're inviting the government side to present for 10 minutes. We're inviting those that have been nationally vocal on the no side, have been sent invitations. We're waiting confirmation from some of them. And then Ambassador Schuman, who had expressed his interest in doing the lecture series at the university, is going to be doing it as well. 25 minutes for the no's, 25 minutes for the guest lecturer, and 10 minutes for the referendum unit. So basically, in a nutshell.
Which will give, the referendum unit will just give like a little historical backdrop to it as such, right? So the main thrust is the no and the guest lecturer that are going to have equal times to share their contribution.
A lot of times people look at the universities or any educational institution as a captive audience. They may not have a say, you know, in terms of whether they have to show up. University, not so much. But has there been an interest as a historian on the part of students at the university to learn more about the body of history that surrounds this issue?
This issue, yes. For the past 10 years, I've been teaching a course, Belize-Guatemala Relations. And students, even from biology program, from nursing program, have been little by little signing up for that course as such, no? But apart from that, I need to say, and maybe especially say to Kevin, no? It's way back in January that, in fact, it's some of the students who met Ambassador Schuman in PG, and they were some of the ones who were telling us we need to get him to participate and join with UB, and UB needs to be a part of this to get him and you know, do a, as Senator Lizarraga is saying, to do a countrywide tour, to take this message, to inform people as such. You know, it's something that they have been pushing for and clamoring for, and they formed a history club. They have been very pushy in what all they want to get done, what all they want to see, what they want to participate in as such. No? So yes, it's the history department is part of it, but we have an administration that is jumping on board, that is ready to also provide what they call fair and balanced discussions on a number of themes, and this one to them is one of the most imperative themes at this point in time, talking about the ICJ. So no, we do have.
No, most students are anti-establishment. It's by nature. As a student, and I know both of you and William were anti-establishment. It's just you're at a stage in your life when you're questioning all institutions, and you tend to be a revolutionary in that standpoint. And the opposite of that is that you have a disgust for politicians. There's a tendency for you to feel as though the political directorate is completely out of touch, generational-wise and issue-wise, as to how they approach things. Senator, you have a reputation for being very balanced in the Senate. Your presentations are normally well-informed. They're normally apolitical. And I have to say as well, I've noticed that you have taken on some additional steps. In addition to that, in terms of being on the ground, you recently visited the Sarstoon area and the monument. How do you think that this is, just to follow up from William's question, in terms of how is it that you believe that you'll be able to connect with them, as you were speaking about the common interest that you have on this issue? You being an independent senator, how is it that you're easily able and easier able than some of the politicians that are in the House to connect with these students?
Well, let me say, first of all, thank you for your kind words. And part of the reason, I must say, for me being that way is that I try to get in touch with people. I try to get a feel on the ground, so to speak. And that's what prompted my visit to the Sarstoon. I was invited by the association of NGOs that had this trip, and I decided to accompany them. This is perhaps one of the most important issues facing us as a nation today. And for us to, as leaders in the community and the society, for us to be able to speak on any issue, we have to be informed. And I thought one of the best ways to become informed was to visit the front line, to see exactly what all this commotion was about, so to speak, in the South. Totally expecting I would have been arrested.
Taken to Livingston.
Or at least would have, I mean, no, not really, but I mean, expecting some sort of confrontation. And with your permission, I'll digress just a little bit, and I want to say that I was extremely proud of our defense and frontline people in the manner in which they met us, in the manner in which they offered us to accompany us, and in lending us that ease, that security which they provided. At all times, we did not feel threatened by the GAF, by the Guatemalan Armed Forces. I must take this opportunity to say I'm saddened to hear that because of the conditions of the bridge at the forward operating base, one of the troops, and we didn't mention it, one of the troops fell down, tripped down, and hurt himself terribly. I hope he's doing fine.
Wow.
I'll find out today. But back to your point. This is why we came together with UB, because they had this. They have this mandate. They have this call. I didn't hear that story yet from the students, and I'm happy to see students are becoming engaged and want to be informed about the major issues facing our country. So it was a perfect, to me, come together, so to speak, because they have the mandate, we have the interest, and they've graciously accepted to be the hosts of this event. So I think that, you know, we've spoken about this before, Kevin. All we can do is afford our people education. We need to clear away all the fear and fear-mongering and half-truths, and we need to focus on the facts. And we need to expose our people to the realities of this fear that they have as well. Because fear is real. I tell my friends, I mean, no matter how I have been educated on snakes, I still fear snakes. It's a real fear. I don't want to touch them if I don't have to, right?
I like that.
Unless somebody not back me down corner and say, you have to touch it, Senator, otherwise you're a coward or whatever. But what I'm saying is, fear is real.
Yes.
So whether it's a fear of being invaded by Guatemala, whether it's a fear of losing a piece of land, whether it's a fear of what's going to happen to our borders, these are real fears, real issues, which any empathetic government, in my view, should be able to address fully, calmly, and calm your people. That is the responsibility of leaders. Educate themselves, educate the people, and calm them. I remember when we were going to independence, we were in a similar kind of thing. People, you know, a lot of people were afraid to go to independence. The majority of people decided to go to independence. So we're at a junction now when we're very nervous, especially when faced with a neighbor who has been very aggressive in many respects. We've seen what has happened to some of the people that have visited the Sarstone. I was fully expecting to have a similar encounter, just to know what it was like, to see how they would react, what they would say to us. Thankfully, we did not see that part. And thankfully, we saw the Belizean forces exert some command and some control of at least that event on the Sarstone on that day. What was very disappointing was to see that there's a thriving gillnet fishing community on the Guatemalan side of the Sarstone River. And this village is very long. It's a long village. I would venture to say it could even be miles. And that every house, every boat, every yard almost had gillnets. So this is a gillnet fishing community.
On their side, though?
On their side, on their banks. Our banks not
But is the gillnet set up on their side too? That's the question.
The gillnets affect the fish, the fish in the whole area. And we saw canoes with nets, and we saw canoes north of the Sarstone mouth, right? North, along our coast, that when they saw us coming, because the waters are very shallow, we couldn't go all the way in. When they saw us coming, they took to the mangroves, the little canoes, they paddle up in, so they know how to do it. So we have been, our waters have been plundered, so to speak, and continue to be plundered and continue to be affected by this. But I digress.
Let me ask a simple question. What is the objective of this lecture series? Because everyone who has engaged in terms of the discussion on the referendum and the ICJ has been accused of having some agenda. Yeah. What's the agenda, so to speak, of this lecture series?
I'll give it to Mr. Ross, but in one word, education.
Yeah, I think more than anything else, because one of the things I'm finding at UB and in other places where I'm invited sometimes to make presentations, is that a lot of people are not only afraid, the fear is not only with outside forces, whether the outside forces, Guatemala's invasion or the ICJ, there's a lot of local fear. They are afraid of their own relationship with their neighbors, with their friends. We have gotten, and I think both sides can be accused of it, of getting to the point of making accusations, right? Whether you are calling somebody stupid for wanting to go to the ICJ or crazy for not wanting to go to the ICJ. We have done that too much, where people are kind of now afraid of
it might be
being upfront.
It might be a one-sided name-calling game, though.
Yeah. And so one of the things we want to do is take that away. Try to get people to be comfortable with the information. Comfortable and give them the information. Yesterday in a conversation we were having, there is the historical information, right, to sovereignty. There's the question of the legalities. So you have legal questions, there's political questions that need asked. We need to create an environment where people will be comfortable to ask these questions, and when they get their answers, get comfortable with it, so that come next year, come April 10th, they are comfortable with walking to and making a choice as such. But also in sitting and talking to each other, whether in the household or whether in the neighborhood, just having a conversation with information. So more than anything else, we want that information to be out. And that's why it's structured so that there is equal time for the people saying no, as for the keynote speaker, Ambassador Schumann, as such. No?
I want to say one other thing. We saw in previous presentations that dealt with this issue that sometimes the crowd gets a little riled up and emotional, and people get up and make speeches and want to commence another debate. We're going to format this in such a way where you're entitled to come up and ask a question. We don't want to hear your opinion. We don't want to hear a debate, a new debate. We want to give you an opportunity to ask these experts in the field, right, a question. So you ask one question, you could ask a follow-up, and then you get to the back of the line again if you have another question. We want to give as many people as possible the opportunity to question any of the lecturers, right? We don't want it to be, the events to be dominated or to be taken over by one or two individuals as we've seen. So one question, maybe a follow-up, and then you could hit the queue again, but give as many people as possible the opportunity to ask questions. Or submit questions, you could give your question to somebody and say, Mr. Ross, please read this question to me. But that is the format we are planning on having.
I want to go back though.
Yeah.
I want to knit in everything that's going on. Recently, we had a politician, a leader, who said that when asked about his position in relation to the ICJ, was complaining that, was pointing out that he didn't want people to be voting against the messenger. And he was complaining that, you know, he had certain problems with the way that the leadership were in fact conducting the ICJ campaign, and was calling for new faces and new voices. It's a cultural fact that our political history over the past maybe 12 years has been directed solely on who the messenger is.
Yeah.
Is it that the UB, in follow-up to William's question, is really trying to change who the face of the conversation is, to see if we can move beyond what the personalities are and what the fear, I love the two examples I gave of snakes and of independence, of moving past that fear by changing the face. Is that part of what we're trying to do?
I think so, and I think for the main purpose of, with somebody new, with different speakers, and different speakers with authority, people who are trusted by their communities as such, your mind will be more open, right? Because as I agree, there are certain people that as they step up, your mind gets closed. You don't want to listen to them as such, right? And so we need to get beyond that. And so we are trying to, university and the social sector senators are trying to find people who their community will listen to, right? And so apart from Ambassador Schumann, we're inviting different members, different people who have publicly expressed a no to the ICJ to be part of this discussion as such, and to provide, give them reasonable time to provide an explanation to the public, so that the public could understand where both are coming from as such.
I like the question from Kevin, because I think we've not been able to go beyond the personalities, where people, you know, based on, and they have strong opinions to both sides of the political divide. So a big part of it is having people access the information. Now, when you're talking about the format, obviously you cannot cover the full history of everything. One of the challenges I
But we have
see...
10, remember? All over the and they'll be broadcast and aired live too, so the whole country can participate. Okay?
Now, my question still remains, you know, in terms of the way this entire ICJ issue has been framed, is that there's a body, you have your experts, but there's also this body of information that people are intimidated by. You know, you have to read, people start saying, oh, the 1859 treaty, the this, the that, etc. And for the average person who may not necessarily want to do that kind of heavy lifting in terms of the research, etc., how will you make that information accessible that if nothing else, it creates a spark and becomes a catalyst for them to actually go and do some heavy lifting to inform themselves in a different way? Because I'm sure this is not a one-off that will be, you know, some magic bullet that will get people to the point where they can decide yes or no.
Well, your question was an excellent question. We saw and we agreed that there was a need to broaden the exposure, to broaden the education, to expose people to all the different sides. Information. At all the presentations, I think that these booklets will be provided. It's an easy read, very small. If you notice, I read it and got it quite marked up. Very helpful. This is the easy read. Then there's this book that says, you know, where Belize refutes Guatemala's claim. Excellent book too, from our presenters, Eamon Courtney, Asad Schumann, a couple of Fred Martinez, Janine Sylvester, a couple other people. When
still in print?
I hope so.
I
hope so. I think so. Yeah.
They're being shared widely.
Remember, Guatemala was asked to present its legal claim at the OAS. In the last ditch, I think this, you might have to help me out here. One of the last efforts we made to try and solve this thing,
at the OAS,
right, by the OAS, and then it was after that. The OAS suggested that if this doesn't work, then we go to the ICJ, and then no, we're there where the people have to decide if we go. But this is not a heavy book either, and it's well written. Our arguments are very, you know, enlightening in this book. Then you have the legal opinion, of course, and this is available online. I know this for sure.
Yes, it is.
I've sent the link. This is an easy read as well. It's not heavy, written in language that you can understand, and it's not a heavy book. So for your students, I think they should definitely read this. And then this book, I mean, written by Asad, is excellent. I hope you've read it. I hope you've read all of these, because I think
that one is heavy reading, but there's a summary at the end of each chapter, which makes it.
Yes, exactly. He presented it in he did quite a bit of research in this book, and I'm not promoting his book per se, but I am, in the sense that it's a valuable piece of history, you understand me? And he did a lot of research. So, William, why did we not do one series at UB? We could have done one evening at UB. No, we decided that this matter was too important for both the university and both for us as senators, as our country, to do more than one. We thought we would go to each municipality and have the people come, invite them to come so that they could listen and participate. We don't just want them to hear on radio or see it on TV. We want them to come and engage, ask their questions, listen to their colleagues' concerns too, listen to the neighbors' concerns. And hopefully at the end of all of this, our Belizean people will have been exposed to the truth, to fact, and they will be in a position to make an informed vote on April, when the time comes for us to decide.
No, there are lots of emotions. I call this an emotional, this is going to be an emotional decision. I don't care. It's like you said, I love the analogy with the snakes. No matter how much you inform me that this is a non-poisonous snake, you tie the mouth of that thing, I ain't touching it. That's a real thing. But for this generation Xers, these Gen Xs and these millennials, they call nonsense. They call BS immediately. Can somebody be critical to say the format that you've described, Mr. Ross, is first the government is going to be neutral. They're going to present the historical fact. And then we're going to have the senators who are going to be neutral. No. Sorry, we're going to have the news. We're going to have the news. Sorry, we're going to have the news. And then we're going to have the Assad, who is a yes. All right. And all the literature I'm looking at, all of these, every single one of these books that I have seen, all are saying yes. Am I right, Senator? Every single one of these books that you just pointed to is saying yes. I've read them, so
I think
it's a pregnant question.
I think that
Let's deliver the
I think
baby.
certainly when you look at our legal opinion is telling us, and this opinion is not ours really, it is from 4 world respected authorities in international law.
They're all saying yes.
2 previous judges of the ICJ. This a legal opinion. It reinforced what we want to know, that and yes, they said yes.
Yes.
Okay. I think this book was where we made our arguments. This book is excellent because it showed you what we're prepared to say and what we're prepared to use in our defense as well.
And at the end of the day, it says yes.
At the end of the day, we were defending
the strength of our case.
We were defending the strength of our title. That's what we're doing. Well, we're defending our title, of course, yes.
Yes.
Right? This is our territory, we're willing to defend it. And we were putting up our defense.
Yes.
And this book seeks to inform us on why we should go.
It's a flamboyant yes. No, my point was that, okay, let's look at...
And in all fairness, though, Kevin, I think, I'm not going to quote Assad directly, but I think his book was very informative from a complete historical, sense, that it gave you all that information. And then at the end of the day, he ended up with the conclusion that
we should go.
We should.
Yes.
And this is before the referendum.
Yeah.
This is before the discussion of referendum. This was our best people simply defending us with the case as such, right?
Yes.
So I would disagree that this is a yes document.
Yeah.
That document says no? You're saying that this document
this
says
document doesn't say yes or no.
Yeah, it just
This
defends.
document just defends it. It's prior to the whole OAS referring it to the ICJ. It's before that.
After you read
You're absolutely correct, because
Yes.
this was an attempt for us not to go to the ICJ. If this succeeded, if our legal arguments in this succeeded, and we agreed with Guatemala, we wouldn't have gone. This was all a part of the series of failed attempts at negotiating and coming to an agreement with Guatemala. And it was the OAS that said, look, if this doesn't work, then we're going to recommend that you go to the ICJ.
I guess one of the questions I have
I want to
finish
my point, which was that, and even if you say that, I heard at least 3 of the persons who made contributions to that book who are saying yes. No matter how you peel it and put it in.
Are you sure it's a complete yes or it's a conditional yes?
It doesn't matter what kind of yes I'm sure Mr. Courtney, I believe, is publicly on record saying yes. I think Assad, you said, is in there, who's also saying publicly yes. We can't dress around it. And dancing around it doesn't, to me, help in terms of credibility of the students that you're looking at. Students look through these things. They're not, especially in the social media age where they're watching these things.
Yeah.
Now, my question was particularly that, in terms of looking at the setup, looking at who's coming and the format, can somebody make the argument that there's a heavier tilt towards the yes side? You have a neutral whose government, whose position the head of government is saying that we should go. We have the yes vote, the yes components who are coming and they are saying yes. We have Mr. Schuman coming in who's saying yes.
But there's not a yes and a Mr. Schuman.
Okay, there's not a yes, Mr. Schuman, but he's written articles and has publicly stated.
No, Kevin, I'm not saying that Mr. Schuman is not a yes.
Okay.
I'm saying is that Mr. Schuman is the only presenter there. There's not another presenter that is doing yes.
Yes.
Right?
No, okay, good. So there's not a presenter saying yes, but the neutrality from the government represents an arm whose principles are saying yes.
Kevin, let me answer you.
Am I right?
But he's giving the person.
But
Kevin,
can I just pull back the conversation 1 second? I'll ask this in another way, because we're talking about this lecture series, and I asked flat out what your agenda is, and you said education.
Yeah.
I think what Kevin is getting at is a valid point. The body of evidence that currently exists is written from a perspective of people who have gotten to the point and they're comfortable saying yes. Is there any research or any book written by anyone who is on the other side? Because what we've seen in terms of the public debate has been a very emotionally charged no, not necessarily grounded in the same facts that you have when you have your compelling yeses, right? Is there anything that takes away the emotional charge that still has the no behind it, but can stand on an even footing with the body of evidence from these that is being used?
Let me say this. You're absolutely correct. First of all, this is educational, Kevin, and there are two sides to this thing. There's the no's. There are people that say no, or let me rephrase that. We're going to have a choice, either yes or no. And we're saying that if you're going to say yes or no, it's got to be based on information. On accurate information.
Should be.
On strong historical proof and evidence. Why we chose Assad was Assad has been around in this issue from prior to our independence. He was one of the people in the fight, in the struggle for independence. He was lobbying for support at the United Nations and all over the world. So he's intimate with this subject from the very, very beginning.
And very credible.
Very credible. So, yes, if at the end of the day, the facts lead you to a yes, that's good. If at the end of the day, you listen to the facts and you say, no, I'm still not convinced, that's your decision. It's a personal decision. It's a very personal decision. But we would like to think that it should be a personal decision based on accurate information. Not half-truths, not fair, but real information. And I think that to show our lack of bias in this is because we have invited these, the first format was 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. We decided no, because the government is so engaged in its own tours and the referendum unit, that we'd cut them down to 10 and give the no's an opportunity 25 minutes. Where else have they had an opportunity to have 10 nationwide lectures on their position, live broadcasts? This is an opportunity we're giving in the most unbiased of ways, I believe, and an opportunity for the people to hear and be exposed to all the sides and to engage. We'll have an hour of question and answers in 10 locations, so that's 10 hours of questions and answers. If we cannot educate ourselves after that or be more informed, you know, so I mean, I think what we are presenting is as fair and as balanced as one could want.
And you should be applauded for your effort.
Thank you.
I think
and the university,
because the entire idea that you're moving away from the usual presenters and those who may rub people the wrong way may make the information accessible to them, or at least people open to the information. Right. Now, I want to take one other direction. What would you want people to come with? Because I know as a student, from, you know, you should do some preparation to go so that you can ask the right questions, and you need to be prepared. Yeah. Or do you prefer, you know, people coming in as blank slates and to get the information?
Well, let me say this, and then I'll hand it over to him. Yeah. I don't think there's anything as a stupid question. I think if you ask a question, it's because you have a concern. Absolutely. And I think if you have a concern, we should address it. Absolutely. So,
yes, I actually, there's been a lot of media coverage. There's been a lot of presentations on this. There's been a lot of debates that have gone on. I can remember Lisa and Dickie Bradley participating in a debate.
That's a good one.
There was a recent one in PG, as such, with Mr. Morgan and Mr. Enriquez helping there. There's a lot of, right? And some good, some not good as such, right? And so I think the public out there already has a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, right? And so what we have done, and I want to go back, because the 10 minutes from for the government is to give what has happened so far, right?
Historical.
It's not to sell the ICJ, it's not to sell the referendum, it's what has happened so far, right? And then we have the two main speakers, the 25 minutes for the ones embracing the no, and 25 minutes for Ambassador Schuman, who, yes, it has gone on records as promoting the ICJ. So you have a balanced time there. And I have read letters, I've read articles from a number of people who are proponents of no, and I think there are some good ideas there. And I think they need to share those things there. Whether that will convince the public, whether Assad's take will convince the public, the point is that the information needs to get there, and it needs to become more across the whole country.
My final question is, in looking at the news, there was a recent presentation done by some young people, and at the end of that presentation, a poll was taken, an exit poll. And the exit poll showed that the students there, I believe it was also a UB Bamapan event,
yes,
or that they were leaning towards that there were more people voting yes to the ICJ issue than no. In this issue, in these lecture series, the public is invited. In terms of me listening to our Prime Minister at the last press conference, one of the things that he alluded to, and the Prime Minister is one of the best speakers of this country. But one of the things he said concerned me, which was that, don't want to misquote him, but in essence, the concern that he had was that he was looking at these meetings, these town hall meetings and these public discussions, and he felt as though there was not a balance in the audience of persons who were in favor of yes, and he felt as though the persons who were in favor of no were heckling and clowning, and he felt that they needed to be balanced in terms of bringing them to the table. I have seen where, in terms of the constitutional amendments, that became a circus.
Yeah.
We can remember the footage of the Deputy Prime Minister being hauled off in terms of a UB event where he was trying to get into. My question is, how do we have control so that the utopian view of how we're going to proceed, of very fair and everything's going to go well, one question go to the back of the line, and we know Belize doesn't work that way. How do we make sure that the process of these lectures, which is very important to the students, and we already see the students are thinking, how do we protect it so that even though the public is there, and even though the political forces that be are playing on this event, how do we make sure that it remains a useful, educational, and impartial event, which is beneficial? That's my final question.
I think we're optimistic people, and you inject a certain level of having to be very practical and pragmatism in there that I think we have to take, and we have to make sure that we are structuring it, we are getting the moderators, we are getting the individuals that we hope can help us with that, and that structure would entail. We'll have to have the individuals there, and I think that's one of the first things we need to say at each one of these presentations, that ask people to please kind of follow a protocol, kind of follow a certain
but if my memory
level of
serves me
behavior.
right, that event with DPM was actually one that was restricted in its scope.
Yes, it was.
UB.
Yes,
this is a public engagement.
Yes. And we have rules, like Mr. Ross said, that will be announced by our moderators or MCs, so that people know the rules. And we ask that people, we expect that people will follow the rules.
Yeah.
So
I will say one thing, and I guess the pragmatic approach that Kevin is talking about is something to ensure that people feel that it is a safe space to either agree or disagree.
Absolutely.
I think the challenge that we now face, and why I applaud this effort, is because both UB and the senators could sit on the sidelines like so many people are doing and say, I don't want to engage. At the end of the day, the objective here is not whether people are convinced to vote yes or no. I think it's to convince people to go out and vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Brexit happened because people voted.
Right.
And I think that's why I think this effort should be applauded and should be encouraged, because you want people to not disengage and say, I am confused about this, it's crazy this or crazy that. You want people to engage. Can, I think you take into consideration what Kevin has posited in terms of making sure that there's some kind of control, that you don't have a hostile environment that will impede the discussion in an open manner that is beneficial to those there and also...
I don't think we've ever seen a hostile environment. I think we've seen people with strong passions, very passionate about their positions. And that's fine, but pose it in the form of a question. That is what we're seeing. Come up and have a question. We're not going to encourage debates. We're not going to encourage opinions. We want the majority of people to be exposed to the facts or to the different presenters. And we want as many people as possible to express themselves through questions, to voice their concerns through questions. And they could question anybody on the panel, you see? So the key is to have as much people as possible participate. Now, one or two that we've seen before try and go and hijack this thing. No, that will not be tolerated. That will absolutely not be tolerated. So, again, education, participation. And I think that our people will be respectful. I don't think they're going to be hostile. I think we could see some high emotions. That's fine. That's healthy too.
That's a positive place to end, but we're completely out of time. The tour starts November 20th at the UB Gymnasium at 7:30. Then it moves on to Orange Walk. 7:30 p.m. Then it moves on to Orange Walk at Muffles Auditorium on the 22nd at the same time. And then it moves down to Dangriga at the Ecumenical Auditorium on November 25th at 3 p.m. And then it goes to Benke at Mount Carmel High School Auditorium on the 27th of November at 7:30 p.m. And then to San Pedro High School Auditorium on November 29th at 7:30 p.m. Then to Corozal Community College Auditorium on December 2nd at 3 p.m. And then San Ignacio at Sacred Heart Auditorium on December 4th at 7:30 p.m. Then on to Independence at Independence High School Auditorium on December 6th at 7:30 p.m. Then to Punta Gorda to Father Ring Parish Hall on December 9th at 3 p.m. And then finally in Belize City at the SC Auditorium on December 11th at 7:30. But that's all the time we have. We're going to take a break now, and then we're going to move into our second segment where we're going to be having Smart with their new products. So stay tuned.